This is a story about the identity of Thunderbolt, the gentleman bushranger. He was responsible for 5 years of terror, 1865 to 70, in the New England district of New South Wales, and there are many conspiracy theories about his true identity. Hi, my name's Bruce Arthur from Was Archaeology, and I'm on a mission to find out who was the person who called himself Thunderbolt. On the 25th of May 1870, after a long chase, a police constable and Thunderbolt struggle in the clear water of Kentucky Creek, Uralla. Thunderbolt, whoever he was, will not surrender, and the mounted policeman guns him down. Thunderbolt slumps down into the watery grave, and his short life of crime comes to an end. Now, when Walker arrived at Blanch's Inn after galloping down from Uralla, Ward took off down that exact fence line there to Kentucky Creek. Thunderbolt's horse becomes bogged in the creek. Constable Walker shoots the bushranger's horse so the criminal can't escape, and after a short struggle shoots him from above down through the collarbone. The bullet exits out his left rib cage. So it was late in the day, it must have been getting dark, and they camped at the inn. The police and the other guests camped at the inn, Blanch's Inn, for the night. But when they went back to Kentucky Creek, Ward's body had shifted, so he mustn't have been dead when Walker left him there, and they did find his body under a bush further up the creek bank. A little story I'd like to tell you about Fred and Will Monkton. This is taken from 3 Years with Thunderbolt by Ambrose Pratt. Now, this was written in the early 1900s, and Smith says that Will Monkton wasn't with Thunderbolt for 3 years, so this could be rather an historical novel. That Will Monkton was only 15 when he teamed up with Thunderbolt. Later in his career, and Will Monkton only stayed with Thunderbolt for a year. But this is towards the end of Will Monkton's reign with Thunderbolt. We entered Queensland in the guise of shearers, and everywhere we went, we pretended to be brothers, Fred and Jack Wardhill. We wandered about from place to place, living the while like fighting cocks and having a really splendid time. The Chicken turned out to be a grand racer. Now, the Chicken was a stolen racehorse from somewhere in northern New South Wales, because that's how they evaded the police so often. They stole only the best horses, the fastest horses. And Thunderbolt's well-known horse, which he evaded police with for many years, was called Combo. But Combo was worn out, so they stole another good horse named the Chicken. So the Chicken turned out to be a grand racer and a gold mine to us, for he carried everything before him. At the Stanthorpe race meeting, so they decided to go straight for a little while and went to the Stanthorpe race meeting. He won the two principal events, and at almost every other place we visited, he more than paid our expenses. The result was that at the end of the period I have named, Thunderbolt and I carried in our belts a tidy sum of £200, which would have been a lot of money in those days. So this is probably 1868. But then came the end. One evening, feeling a little seedy, I retired early to bed at a public house at which we were staying near Toowoomba, leaving the outlaw to sit up carousing with some boon companions. When I awoke next morning, he was seated on a chair beside me with an expression of solemnity that had long been a stranger to his visage. "What's up, Fred?" I asked, starting up in sudden anxiety, for my thoughts had flown at once to the ever-present peril of discovery. "I've sold the chicken," he replied. "Oh no! Whatever did you do that for?" I demanded, thoroughly astonished and a little angry too, for I thought he should have consulted me on this matter. But Thunderbolt passed his hand over his brow and he answered in a low voice, "It's the homesickness, lad." Now, Will Monkton probably knew Thunderbolt better than anyone else, but more like a father-son relationship, how to teach your boy a life of crime. 4 days after Thunderbolt was shot by Walker, Monkton happened to be travelling through Uralla after being released from prison. He swears under oath at the identification of Thunderbolt's corpse. "I have seen a dead body lying in the courthouse. I recognise it as Thunderbolt. I am quite positive it is him. I was with Ward," so he says Ward. "I was with Ward for 12 months. He then made his mark in front of a sergeant, a police sergeant and a JP, and the statement was dated 29th day of May 1870. Anyone can visit Thunderbolt's grave at Uralla today, but for some strange reason Monkton, now a wealthy landholder, changed his statement. They went to the Shoalhaven River and stuck up McElroy's Inn. Thus began the partnership. At the inn, Britton said, "You can call me Thunderbolt." I promised to keep this a secret for 30 or 40 years, so Monkton's changed his statement 67 years later. Declared at Armidale this 25th day of August, 1937. Thunderbolt set out to meet them. Arriving at the Split Rock, right here, where he had commenced his career 7 years earlier, the Bushranger came upon the publican, J.R. Blanche, and his wife returning home in their buggy. He bailed them up, robbed them, then decided to accompany them back to the inn. Soon after, he met the hawker Capisotti on his way back from Uralla after the Monday race meeting. So remember, it was a long weekend and there was a race meeting in Uralla, and Capisotti probably would have been pretty cashed up. But the hawker was relieved of a jewel box, only £3.13 6 in cash, a pair of ladies' earrings and some finger rings, an Albert watch and chain, and a few nuggets of gold. Other victims arrived at Blanche's Inn, where the Bushranger entertained and shouted his captive audience with stolen money. This was a typical act of Thunderbolt's: visit an inn, depart, then return later to entertain a crowd. As we pan around this small country graveyard in Uralla, the last resting place of Thunderbolt, I ponder who is really buried in his grave. It's nearly 150 years since he was shot by Walker, and the conspiracy theories just won't go away. Lying under the ground are the remains of either Frederick Wordsworth Ward, his half-brother Harry Ward, according to Barry Sinclair, our relative of the Wards, or Frederick Britton, according to Will Monkton's second statutory declaration. Hamilton and Sinclair, in their 2009 work Scourge of the Ranges, had a theory that the New South Wales government in 1870 was so keen to let the public know that they had killed Thunderbolt, they alleged a police conspiracy to cover up the true identity of the man buried here. This held so much weight that in 2010, the New South Wales government ordered the release of all records relating to his capture and death. These documents from 1870 police archives prove that the corpse was indeed that of Fred Ward. He was identified by 5 witnesses, and Dr. Sam Spassat, who conducted the post-mortem, noted Thunderbolt's old bullet wound to the left knee and the 2 warts on the back of his left middle finger. UNE lecturers Dr. David Roberts and Carol Baxter of the Australian History Department proved beyond doubt that there was no conspiracy in their academic paper exposing an expose, very well researched paper of 2012. There was no evidence of a cover-up by the New South Wales Police, and there was no evidence that Thunderbolt ever went to the United States from USA immigration records. They also stated that the 2 books which started this whole controversy, namely Scourge of the Ranges and The Truth About Thunderbolt, were both works of mainly historical fiction. The question remains, why did Will Monckton change his statement about the identity of Thunderbolt in 1937? And why did the owner of McElroy's Inn on the Shoalhaven River state during a hold-up, one of them said, the Bushrangers said to her, "My name is Fred Britton, you can call me Thunderbolt." So these criminals assumed each other's identities on numerous occasions. And the crucial point which investigators have missed is that Fred Britton and Fred Ward had virtually the same phenotype or external physical appearances. So we need to clarify the identity of Thunderbolt further, I think. Some responsible institution should take a leaf out of the University of Leicester's book, who proved beyond doubt the identity of Richard III by DNA testing. Some responsible institution needs to exhume the remains from Thunderbolt's grave before they deteriorate any further. Indeed, if there are any remains in that grave, and compare Thunderbolt's DNA with the DNA from Fred Ward's and Fred Britton's nearest living relatives. So I leave you with the enigma of Thunderbolt, the gentleman bushranger. My name is Frederick Ward. Maybe. I am a native of this isle. I rob the rich to feed the poor and make the children smile. So it's Bruce Arthur signing off from Oz Archaeology. Tell 'em I died game. The history of Australia's bushrangers.